My name is Chris Symons, and I'm a geologist currently working as a science coordinator with the Deepsea Challenge expedition. So the activity that we did today was about ocean exploration, and it was intended for the kids to understand something about which kinds of animals and submersibles can go to the bottom of the ocean or where they live in the water column. And then to understand something about buoyancy and what it takes to build a submarine to go to the bottom of the ocean. The first things I like to do when I start talking about the ocean is to make sure the kids have an appreciation for how much of the earth is ocean. So I love to bring in a globe to show the kids, and most of them get it about right, that it's 3/4 or I like to say 70% water. And then it launches into a discussion of what do they see on land, mountains, valleys, volcanoes, and what would they expect to see in the ocean. So once they appreciate that the bottom of the ocean isn't just a flat, desolate plain, we talk about which animals live where. And so we went over to the wall, and I had different examples of different animals and submersible submarines, the Titanic wreck, the Alvin, which a lot of marine scientists use, and they put them in sequence from 0 to 7 miles. And at the end of it, I want them to appreciate that there was one submarine that went to the deepest place on Earth, the Trieste, and that was 52 years ago. And then I talk about that Mr. Cameron had built a submarine himself to go that deep because no one's explored there since, and very few people have explored the trenches. And then we start playing a game of buoyancy. So I bring in different things, not a lot of things, but the plastics, balls. I like to use a bocce ball and a balloon of about the same weight, a croquet ball, just because it's an easy question: what's going to sink, what's going to float, and they usually get it right. But at this point, they haven't started thinking about why. And so then we moved to empty bottles and marbles and observe which one sinks and floats. And ultimately, we start, if the marbles sink, we'll put them in the plastic bottle that floats, and shouldn't it sink as well? And so through the course of this, by adding some marbles and putting in different balls of different weights, they understand that it's the volume, the density, what's inside the bottle that makes a difference. So then we build our submarine. And to build the submarine, we decide there are two things we need to do. We need to get to the bottom of the ocean, and we need to come back up to the surface. So we start by getting to the bottom. So I talked about a pressure, and how much pressure do you feel if you're at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? And in this case, it's 16,000 pounds per square inch. And students can usually relate to a school bus standing on end on their thumbnail. That would be equivalent to 16,000 pounds per square inch. So I can load the bottle up with enough marbles and rocks, and I have to add 2 padlocks to the side. Anything, I can add anything. I just need to. You want to test it ahead of time before you put the balloons on to make sure that it'll indeed go to the bottom of the aquarium. And then I like to go through the story of how he actually launched and descended into the Mariana Trench. In this case, he was lifted up by a crane, and he was set into the ocean, and he floated. And then scuba divers went into the water, and they go in and actually disconnect the balloons. And so very easily I could cut off the balloons. And now he's sitting poised to go to the bottom, and he waits until he gives the verbal go to the scuba divers to disconnect the last balloons. And once those are disconnected, he sinks to the bottom. And so now we have our submarine at the bottom. So then he explores the bottom, and at this point, you could really talk about anything that one might find at the bottom of the ocean, at the deepest trenches, at shallower trenches. You could talk about animals that you're going to see. We saw amphipods, which are crustacean-like little critters. We saw sea cucumbers, and what we can't see, which was really neat, are the bacteria that were collected in the water samples. So you could talk a lot more at length about the bacteria. And now he's ready to come back to the surface, so what do we do? And I love this part because the students always offer great suggestions, but here he is at the bottom. He can't get out of the sub. But in fact, after a number of guesses, someone almost always gets that he needs to drop some weight. So again, my trusty scissors, he would have done it with a button inside. I can cut the rubber bands off. And if I can get my hand out of the way, he comes back to the surface. Another component that, depending on the age of students, is the discussion of plate tectonics. So you can talk about plate tectonics, about why the trench is where it is. It's the oldest seafloor in the Pacific Ocean. It's a subduction zone. And so I show the kids a map of the age of the seafloor So you can add that or not, but it opens up another discussion of plate tectonics and where else might you want to explore in a submersible like this that's capable of going to 7 miles. So if there's one thing that I'd like the students to walk away with, it's both an appreciation for how little we know about the oceans, how much remains to be explored, as well as how do we get there, how do we get to the bottom of the ocean, and how do we get back up.